We're talking citrus today on Pots and Trowels, and that's brought to you with the support of Cobra Garden and Darlac. Hello and welcome to Pots and Trowels. Well, I'm in the greenhouse today. I shouldn't be really, because it's a glorious day. It's one of the best days we've had for ages to be out in the garden, but I'd got some things I needed to really get on with that I've been neglecting for a while. So here we are now, second week in November, so it is starting to cool down. I've been bringing a few of the tender perennials into the glass house where they're going to be overwintered, some salvias and the lovely sparmannia. This is an African tree that is just starting to flower. Pretty tough. That was in here last year without any heat, so that's 1 year's growth and producing those beautiful flowers. And I just got to give a quick mention to the peppers. Now, we don't know the name of these peppers, unfortunately. They're a sweet pepper, really, really lovely flavour. We've already picked probably 10 off the plants, and as you can see, there's quite a lot still to pick. I think Jill is going to make those into butternut squash and pepper soup, if I'm right. Is that right, Jill?
That's right.
Might we hear about this on one of the podcasts?
Oh, yes.
That'd be good, wouldn't it, to mention it on the podcast. We don't know the name of them because the plants were given to us by a friend of ours called Anne. Now, you don't know Anne, but you may remember I went and pruned some fig trees in a polytunnel earlier this year. Well, Anne is a very keen gardener, and years ago she bought a pepper from a supermarket, loved it so much, took the seed out, and every year she carries on growing it, and that is the result that she got. So fantastic. But the real reason for bringing you into the greenhouse is my citrus, and they're not looking very good, I'm afraid, at the moment. I've got three. We've got an orange, we've got a lime, which has got quite a few fruits developing on it, and a little Calamondin. But as you can see, we've got all these horrible sooty deposits on the leaf. Now, that's partly my fault because I've probably neglected it a little bit this year with being so busy, and normally I would stand these outside during the summer, but this year they were just stuffed into the corner of the greenhouse and left to fend for themselves. Scale insects has been a real problem. Now, I don't know that Jill can get in, but the scale insect is a little sap-sucking insect. There we go. We can just see them on the underside of this leaf. They're tiny little limpet-like structures there on the leaf, and they're all on the stems here as well. You can probably see them underneath the leaves there. So we've got them at various stages, adults and the little ones there as well. And they are a sap-sucking insect. They attach themselves to the underside of the leaf and on the stems, and they suck the sap out. And the sap that is sucked in is then exuded from them, and it drips down onto the leaf as a sticky substance that we call honeydew. So if you get sticky leaves, that is usually the honeydew from aphids and other sap-sucking insects. And then eventually a black mold develops on. And that's a good example of the black mold. It's called sooty mold because it looks like somebody sprinkled soot on there. And it's now drying and going, but it is a fungus that grows on there, and it looks really quite horrible on the leaf, and it stops the light getting to the leaf. Had these been outside in the fresh air, maybe the attack from the scale insect might not have been quite as bad. Now, there aren't really any chemicals to use to control it, and I certainly don't want to spray anything on anything that we're going to eat. And I do love these limes in a gin and tonic, so I don't want to be spraying toxic chemicals on this at all. So I'm going to try and just clean them up for the winter culturally, just to get them through, and then we can keep on top of it next year. Now, this will be in here for the moment, but in maybe a few weeks' time when it cools down, I will take this into a little conservatory that we've got where we keep it at around 10 degrees centigrade, which is 50 Fahrenheit. And that's an ideal temperature. It can be a little bit lower. They will survive down as low as sort of 5 degrees centigrade, which I think is about 41 Fahrenheit. But this one here, the Calamondin, this is grown for these tiny little fruits that ripen to a lovely sort of tangerine colour. You can eat them whole, you can use them in sort of jams and marmalades and that type of thing. This one was left in the greenhouse last winter. It took its chances. We had no heat in here, and it got down to -7 degrees centigrade, which by my reckoning is about 19 degrees Fahrenheit. So 7 degrees centigrade of frost. I thought it was going to die. but it didn't, and as you can see, it's flowered and fruited, although still got a bit of damage on it. So the frost didn't obviously kill the scale insects. So how to get rid of it? Well, what I'm going to do, and it's quite a painstaking and laborious job, and I might not get it all done today. I might need to enlist the help of Mrs. Fish to help with this, and this is where we could do with Sean being here as well. But what I'm going to do is literally just use my thumbnail, and I'm just going to scrape my thumbnail. They tend to be on the mid vein. I'm just going to use my thumbnail and scrape as many off as I can. So it's quite a slow, boring job, just rubbing them off with my fingernails like that to lessen them. And where they're in little clusters on the stems, likewise, it's just squashing them. Horrible, horrible little beastie things. So it's a case of working my way slowly around the plant, a stem at a time. And then what you can also do is, I've got here a bucket with a little bit of just slightly warm water, and I've just put a few drops of washing up liquid into it. And you could also, and this is one with one of those little scours on the back, that you can just wipe the leaves both sides. Now, I'm not going to get rid of them all. I'm not kidding myself that I'm going to get rid of everyone, but if I can vastly reduce the population, it's going to help. So, Jill, you have a little look around the greenhouse. Leave me for 5-10 minutes. Come back and I'll show you how we're getting on. So there you go, that is just about it. It's quite a slow job, but very therapeutic, and you get the lovely scent of the citrus leaves as well. And if you want to pass the time away while you're doing a job like this, then ideal to listen to a podcast, isn't it? And it just so happens, if you didn't know, we have got a new Pots and Trowels podcast out there. Goes out every Sunday morning with things to do in the garden, guest interviews. Jill will be doing a few cookery tips on there, and Sean will be joining as well. So if you want to listen to that, you can get it through your normal podcast provider. So now I've wiped all the scale off and the sooty mold, that black on the leaf, it looks so much better. I know I haven't got rid of it all. It's still going to be some lurking there that will carry on breeding, but it's going to be much easier to manage now, and I'll just keep an eye on it over the winter and next spring. What I might do is just get a clean can of water and rinse it over, because I've got quite a lot of black on it, black water on there, just to rinse it off. And then the final thing that I'm going to do is just give it a feed. Now, we don't want to encourage lots of growth at this time of the year, but I'm going to give it a high potash, a tomato fertilizer essentially. You could use liquid seaweed if you've got some. That will help the little fruits to swell. It induces a little bit of winter hardiness and just toughens the plants up and keeps them ticking over through the winter. So I've got some mixed up in the can. So I'm just going to give that a little feed, so that will soak down to the roots. And I'll probably do that again in a month, because citrus do carry on growing through the winter as long as they've got the temperature. This will flower in the winter, ready for next year's fruit. So what it will do is go inside somewhere, as I mentioned earlier, just a little bit warmer in a few weeks' time for its winter quarters, and then hopefully we'll get limes of it and a much healthier plant next year. Well, thank you for watching Pots and Trowels. That's 1 citrus done, 2 to go. Next week, we're going to be out in the garden, setting out some borders, getting ready to do the exciting bit, which is the planting.